Welcome to PBS 39's Scholastic Scrimmage. Scholastic Scrimmage is brought to you by the members of PBS 39 and by...
Scholastic Scrimmage is sponsored by St. Luke's University Health Network, the region's leading provider of medical education. For more than 100 years, St. Luke's has been dedicated to educating physicians, nurses, and healthcare professionals. To learn more, call St. Luke's InfoLink, toll free at 866 St. Luke's, or visit sluhn.org.
Support for PBS 39's educational programming is provided by the Deluxe Corporation Foundation, proud to support quality programming on PBS 39.
Scholarships provided by the Air Products Foundation. And now, here's your host, Joe Pacetti.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scholastic Scrimmage on PBS 39. I'm your host, Joe Pacetti. The Italian-born writer Italo Calvino composed a piece entitled Why Read the Classics? An impassioned argument for the value of reading and rereading the literary classics. If you're an English teacher, as I am, or someone who's ever tried to convince someone else to read something worthwhile, then you know how difficult it can be to articulate why some works of literature and art are worth exploring. Here are some of his key points. A classic is a book that has never finished saying what it has to say. There should therefore be a time in adult life devoted to revisiting the most important books of your youth. Every rereading of a classic is as much a voyage of discovery as the first reading. Every reading of a classic is in fact a rereading. And finally, the classics are the books that come down to us, bearing upon them the traces of readings previous to ours, and bringing in their wake the traces they themselves have left on the culture or cultures they have passed through. So to all of our younger viewers out there, take it from one of the masters. Reading classics is worth it, even though you might not be aware of it. So when I tell you Moby Dick has value that builds and evolves over the course of your life, please, please believe me. Off the soapbox and onto the dais. Let's meet the Northampton Concrete Kids and the Wilson Warriors. We'll start with Northampton.
I'm Darian Rook, and I'm a senior.
I'm Nick Herman, I'm a senior.
I'm Norva Hafrick, and I'm a senior.
I'm Greg Milnes, and I'm a senior.
Northampton's coach is Krista Ames. And the team from Wilson.
I'm Chris Fernandez, and I'm a senior.
I'm Michael Jablonski, and I'm also a senior.
I'm Allison Ryder, and I'm a senior.
I'm Hannah Fabian, and I'm a senior.
Wilson's coach is Paul Stewart. Our judges for today's contest are Sally Campbell, Gary DeLeo, and Kathleen Steele. To our audience, this contest requires rapid recall of facts and favors the resolute. Performances on this stage are not necessarily reflective of these students' academic experiences. At the end of the season, the two final teams will win scholarships for their schools from the Air Products Foundation. And remember, it's always easier to be an armchair quizmaster than a competitor in this arena. We understand the rules, so let's begin the contest with a toss-up. What city in whose Ambassador Hotel Robert F. Kennedy was shot in 1968? Wilson.
Dallas.
Incorrect. Question will go over to Northampton. I will finish the question. What city in whose Ambassador Hotel Robert F. Kennedy was shot in 1968 was the site of riots after policemen who beat Rodney King were acquitted? Sorry, the correct response was Los Angeles. Los Angeles is what we were looking for. Toss-up. La Casa Azul is a museum dedicated to what artist? A Mexican painter who married Diego Rivera and painted self-portraits showing her. Wilson.
Frida Kahlo.
That is correct. And your bonus, pencil and paper ready. What is the perimeter of a triangle whose shortest side has a length of 10 and whose sides are in a ratio of 2 to 3 to 4? .45 was the response we were looking for. Toss-up. In May 2017, Andrew Scheer became head of what political party, recently led by Stephen Harper, that is opposed to Justin Trudeau's Liberals in Ottawa? It is the Conservative Party or the Tories. Toss-up. The Barnes ice cap is found on what island, which is the Horn of Iqaluit and the capital of Nunavut, and which is the largest island in Canada? Wilson.
Prince Edward Island.
Prince Edward Island is incorrect. We'll go over to Northampton. Baffin Island. Baffin Island. Toss-up. What poem, which is set on the 18th of April near the Old North Church, was written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and describes a... Wilson.
The Ride of Paul Revere.
Or Paul Revere's Ride. We'd accept either one. That's good. And your bonus. Visual. So your attention to the monitor, please, as I read aloud. Pencil and paper ready. What is the value of x, given that 3 raised to the x power is the sum of 3 to the 5th plus 3 to the 5th plus 3 to the 5th? Mike.
What is 3 to the 6th?
That is correct. We will accept that response. X equals 6. Toss-up. What civilization, which went through the Jemmet Nasser and Uruk periods, used the cuneiform script and was the first major civilization in Mesopotamia? That would be the Sumer or Sumerian. We would have accepted either one. Toss-up. Millennium Edition and Vista were unpopular versions of what operating system, whose versions XP, 10, and 7 did better? Wilson.
Windows.
Windows is correct, and your bonus. What instrument was played by jazz musicians Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa? Andrew. Sorry, Michael.
Saxophone.
Saxophone is incorrect. It's drums. Drums. Toss-up. What author of the anti-war poem Wichita Vortex Sutra described the best minds of his generation destroyed by madness in his beat poem, Howl? It would be Allen Ginsberg. Beat poet Allen Ginsberg. Toss-up. What American sculptor of Coming Through the Rye showed a man using one hand to hold on to a bucking horse in his bronze sculpture, the Bronco Buster? Frederick Remington was the correct response. Toss-up. What country, which was led by Jewish Prime Minister Leon Blum from 1936 to 1938, faced a scandal during its Third Republic in the Dreyfus Affair? France or the French Republic?
Lightning round!
Before the contest started, we had a coin toss to determine who would go first. Wilson, you had won that coin toss. So I'm going to present you with 2 categories. You'll select the category, and then Northampton will have an opportunity with the other one. Your 2 categories are art movements and parts of speech.
We'll take the parts of speech.
Bold, very bold, but I respect it. Parts of speech. So the rules, as you guys know, 1 minute, no conferring, anybody can buzz in. Which of the 8 main parts of speech, noun, pronoun, verb, adjective, adverb, preposition, conjunction, or interjection, is exemplified by cat in the sentence, the cat is old?
No.
Correct. Timely in this is a timely discovery?
Adverb.
Incorrect. Runs in Pete runs every day?
Verb.
Correct. Quickly in that ended quickly?
Adverb.
Correct. On in I'm on a boat?
Preposition.
Correct. But in I'd order something?
Conjunction.
Correct. She in she is best?
Noun.
Pronoun is correct. Wow in I can't believe it? Wow.
Interjection.
Interjection is correct. 10 in there were 10 soldiers?
Noun.
That is incorrect. Fast in she drives very fast?
Adverb.
Adverb is correct. That's all the questions. Very well done, guys. 10 in that one, there were 10 soldiers, was adjective. There were 10 soldiers because it describes how many there were. Northampton, that leaves us with art movements. Okay, you have 1 minute. No conferring. Anybody can buzz in. Name these art movements given artists from those movements. Claude Monet's painting of a sunrise inspired the name?
Impressionism.
Correct. Jean-Honoré Francard was a member of this late Baroque movement.
Rococo.
Correct. Umberto Boccioni led this Italian movement that embraced modern speed and violence. Incorrect. George Braque and Pablo Picasso were part of this movement.
Post-Impressionism.
Incorrect. Jean Arp was a founder of this movement. You can buzz in with no response if you'd like.
Okay. No response.
David Friedrich was the leader of this German arts and literary movement.
Romanticism.
Correct. Midwestern artist John Stewart Curry was a part of this movement, which depicted scenes of rural America.
Naturalism.
Incorrect. It was regionalism. Just a reminder to both of our teams, by the way, you are welcome to ring in and say no response or skip if you don't know the answer to one of the lightning round questions. Okay? So moving forward, we'll go back to our toss-ups. What molecule, whose 4 bases include a demethylated nucleobase called uracil, comes in ribosomal RNA, and wait till I acknowledge you guys. Okay. So Wilson said RNA, that is correct, and your bonus. Giovanni Guasconti falls in love with this title character who has been confined to her father's gardens in what Nathaniel Hawthorne story? Michael.
The Scarlet Letter.
Incorrect. Rappaccini's daughter. Toss-up. What island that was paired with the Piedmont in the name of the 19th century kingdom is governed from Cagliari and lies just south of Corsica? Wilson.
Sicily.
Incorrect. Question goes over to Northampton. And that would be Sardinia or Sardinia. Would have accepted either pronunciation. Toss-up. What philosopher, who was known as the Angelic Doctor, was a member of this scholastic movement in the 13th century who wrote the Summa Theologica? Northampton.
Thomas Aquinas.
Thomas Aquinas is correct, and your bonus. The 1964 and 1976 Winter Olympics were held in what capital of the Tyrol state in Western Austria? Noah?
Vienna.
Incorrect. Innsbruck. Innsbruck is what we're looking for. Your next question is a video question. Your attention to the monitor, please.
What Federal Service Academy, overlooking New York's Hudson River, was the first American college to distribute class rings?
Wilson.
West Point.
We'll accept West Point of the United States Military Academy. Correct. And your bonus. An ineffective lower sphincter in what structure, which lies posterior to the trachea, can lead to reflux of hydrochloric acid from the stomach? Michael.
Larynx?
Incorrect. Esophagus. Toss-up. Katie Crown voices Tulip, a girl who creates the child Diamond Destiny in what animated film centered on the delivery of babies by the title Birds? And my 3-year-old has made me watch it multiple times. It's Storks. I do not recommend it. It's not really that compelling. Toss-up. The appearance of big character posters and the violent raids of the Red Guards marked what Chinese revolution at the end of Mao Zedong's rule? Wilson.
The Opium Wars?
Incorrect. Question goes over to Northampton. That would be the Cultural Revolution. Toss-up. For a spherical mirror, radius of curvature divided by 2 equals what distance from a mirror or lens to the point where light rays converge? Focal length or distance to the focus would have been the correct response there. Toss-up. What creature, whose blood was applied to the arrows that killed Nessus, lived near Lake Lerna and was a many-headed monster killed by Heracles? Wilson.
Hydra.
Hydra is correct, and your bonus. What 17th century English poet described a slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men in Death Be Not Proud, one of his holy sonnets?
Go ahead,
Who
Michael.
is Don?
I'll accept the pronunciation. It's John Dunn. John Dunn. And that is going to bring us to half. The score at the half is Wilson 140, Northampton 40. Let's have a hand for our teams. At the break during each show, we like to take an opportunity to get to know more about our competitors. This week, we're going to find out what person, past or present, each of our contenders on stage would have dinner with and why. We'll start over here with Northampton.
Mark Bendekovich, because he is a very inspirational person and my favorite teacher.
Danny Brer, because he is my favorite hockey player and he is my inspiration.
Probably Margaret Thatcher, because I just loved her attitude.
I would say Ronald Reagan, because he is a very funny guy.
And Reagan and Thatcher would definitely get along nicely, so that's perfect. Was it planned? Your responses? A little bit. That's fair. Wilson.
Jonas Salk, just see why he decided, or how he found the polio vaccine.
For me, it would be Michael Jackson. He's a very influential person, also the reason why I refer to myself as MJ often.
It would have to be Isaac Newton just because of his intelligent mind. His mind was great.
I'd have dinner with Dean Martin because he's like a great musician and his culture is like the same as mine.
What culture would that be?
Italian.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Dean Martin would definitely be a fun dinner guest. There's no doubt about that. So, thank you, guys. We're going to go back to our toss-ups. What Democratic politician who served as ambassador to the United Kingdom under Franklin Pierce was president prior to Abraham Lincoln? Wilson.
Buchanan.
Buchanan is correct, and your bonus. What English scientist, the author of The Skeptical Chemist, names a law that describes an inverse relationship between a gas's pressure and volume? Michael.
I'm going to go with Graham.
Should have went with Boyle. Boyle was the correct response there. Toss up. What poet depicted a black thing among the snow in The Chimney Sweeper and described force of the night in a song of experience titled The Tiger? That would be William Blake. That's what we're looking for. Songs of experience and songs of innocence. Toss up. What man debated creationist Ken Ham in 2014, spoke at the Washington March for Science, and hosted a TV show where he was called Northampton?
Bill Nye.
Bill Nye. He was called the Science Guy, not Bill Nye, but there you go. Just fit perfectly. And your bonus. What American pioneer of modern dance died in 1927 when her scarf got caught on the tire of an automobile?
I heard about that, but I have no idea. Yeah, no response. No response.
Okay, no response to that. Isadora Duncan was what we were looking for. Duncan.
Lightning round!
So Wilson, you had the opportunity to select last time, so Northampton, you will have the first choice. We have volcanoes or newspapers.
Newspapers.
Newspapers?
Yeah.
Definitely newspapers, not the volcanoes. Okay, so 1 minute, anybody can buzz in, no conferring. What is the most populous American city with a major newspaper called The Times?
The New York Times.
Correct. The Globe. It is a major...
Boston.
Boston is correct. The Tribune, which is owned by a company called...
Chicago.
Correct. The Wall Street Journal.
Washington, D.C.
Incorrect. The Inquirer.
No response.
The Star Tribune.
No response.
The Plain Dealer.
No response.
The Mercury News.
No response.
The Morning News.
No response.
The Star Advertiser.
No response.
Okay, that's all of them. It's Honolulu for the Star Advertiser. You guys don't read that? Neither do I. Neither do I. Okay, so that was newspapers. So Wilson, that leaves you with volcanoes, for better or worse. Answer the following questions about volcanoes. Italian volcano that buried Pompeii.
Vesuvius.
Correct. Male lead actor in Joe versus the Volcano and Castaway.
Tom Cruise.
Incorrect. Planet that contains the shield volcano Olympus Mons.
Mars.
Correct. Horseshoe-shaped collection of 452 volcanoes around the Pacific Rim.
Ring of Fire.
Correct. Singer-songwriter who recorded Volcano and Margaritaville.
Johnny something, pass.
Incorrect. U.S. state in which Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980.
Washington.
Correct. Brittle volcanic glass used to make knives and blades.
Obsidian.
Correct. Trey Parker and Matt Stone cartoon, whose second episode ever was titled Volcano.
Pass.
Hawaiian volcano goddess who was believed to have created the Hawaiian Islands.
Pass.
Vegetable stacked into a flaming volcano at a Japanese hibachi.
Croquette.
Incorrect. Onions. The onion train that they do all the time. They like stack the onions in that little tower and then they light it on fire. The little steam comes out of it. It's all very fun.
I thought you were saying like, what's the name of the thing?
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's just a volcano tower made out of onions. Yeah. And they always do it when you're really hungry. And you just want to eat them. Let's go back to toss-ups, guys. What country contains bull-leaping frescoes in a palace discovered by Arthur Evans called Knossos that was built by the Minoan civilization on Crete? Northampton. Greece is correct to end your bonus. What carbohydrate with formula C6H12O6 is stored in plants as starch and in animals as glycogen? Noah.
Glucose.
Glucose is correct. Toss-up. What country, whose Ras Tanura port exports petroleum from the Ghawar oil field, is home to a cubic object called the Kaaba in its holy city of Mecca? Northampton.
Saudi Arabia.
That is correct in your bonus. What word, which means lightning in German, refers to a nighttime air raids that struck Britain during World War II? Noah.
Blitzkrieg.
Can you be more specific with that, please, or rephrase?
No.
Okay. We were looking for blitz. Okay, so we can't give the blitz. Blitzkrieg is the actual event, but blitz is generally what it refers to. Toss-up. What is the value of 1 million times 1 billion, given that a billion equals 1,000 millions? Wilson.
10 to the 15th power.
10 to the 15th power is correct in your bonus. What member of the Barbizon school depicted 3 peasants collecting leftover crops after a harvest in The Gleaners?
Pass.
Michael. Pass. Jean-Francois Millet is what we're looking for. I knew that one. Yeah, we knew that one. Toss-up. What man who banned the 100 schools of thought and espoused legalism was a member of the Qin dynasty and the first emperor of China? Wilson.
Shi Huangdi.
That is correct to end your bonus. The orange part of a carrot is botanically what structure, which is the largest and dominant root from which other roots sprout?
I never learned plants.
Stem? Stem is incorrect. Taproot. Or tap would have been acceptable also. Toss-up. What NBA team, which won the first of its 5 titles in 1999, has been coached for 2 decades by Greg Popovich and plays Northampton?
San Antonio Spurs.
San Antonio Spurs is correct. And your bonus. Pepe the Frog is a meme connected with what political movement associated with Breitbart, Northampton?
The alt-right.
The alt-right is unfortunately correct, yes. Toss-up. What play that depicts a contest between Euripides and Aeschylus in the underworld was written by Aristophanes and named for a group of amphibians? That would be the Frogs. Immensely popular, obviously. Toss-up. What phenomenon, whose permanent form occurs in some metals below the Curie temperature, generates a namesake field with north and south poles? Magnets. Or magnetism. Magnets or magnetism. Toss-up. What musical, in which All I Care About Is Love is sung by lawyer Billy Flynn, concerns the murder trial of Roxy Hart in a Midwestern metropolis? Chicago was the correct response. Toss-up. What leader lost power after supporting the community charge, or poll tax, led Britain into the Falklands War, and was known... Northampton.
Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret Thatcher. She just keeps coming up over and over and over. Your bonus. Which Cretan princess was given Lelaps, a dog that always caught its prey, by the god who abducted her in the form of a white bull? name was Europa. Europa. Toss-up. The family Trochilidae contains what types of birds, which have extremely high metabolism and beat their wings rapidly to hover? Northampton.
Hummingbirds.
Hummingbirds is correct, and your bonus. What explorer who was born into a Muslim family went on several expeditions to Africa and Western Asia for the Ming Dynasty? Noah.
Marco Polo.
Marco Polo is incorrect. Zheng Ha is what we were looking for. Toss-up. What poet used the phrase great chieftain o' the pudding race to glorify a dish called haggis and employed Scots dialect in the song Auld Lang Syne? That would be Scottish poet Robbie Burns. Burns is what we're looking for. Toss-up. What composer who wrote the music of It Ain't Necessarily So for the opera Porgy and Bess used a lengthy glissando to open his Rhapsody in Blue? Northampton.
George Gershwin.
Gershwin is correct, and your bonus. In 2016, the mixtape Coloring Book was released by what Chicago-based hip-hop artist who collaborated with Kanye West on Ultralight Beam?
Chance the Rapper.
Only the captain can answer. Noah?
Chance the Rapper.
Yeah, Chance the Rapper.
Oh.
We'll take Chance the Rapper.
Okay.
Chance the Rapper is correct. Your toss-up. What northern state in which the St. Albans raid was conducted during the Civil War was also home to Ethan Allen's Green Mountain Boys? Vermont was the state. Toss-up. What denomination's followers read the New World Translation of the Bible and give out the magazines Awake and The Watchtower? Northampton.
Jehovah's Witnesses.
That is correct in your bonus. Which U.S. government corporation created in 1933 by the Glass-Steagall Act ensures up to $250,000 in deposits in accounts at member banks? Noah.
Federal Securities Commission.
That is incorrect. FDIC, or the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Toss-up. Resonant structures are formed by the movement of what particles that reside in atomic orbitals and were studied in the Millikan oil drop experiment? Okay, that brings us to the end of the contest. Electrons was the correct response for that one. So, at the close of our contest, the final score is Wilson 220, Northampton 180. Let's have a hand for both of our teams. And congratulations to Wilson. It's always a pleasure to watch the best and the brightest showcase their immense talents, and we wish Northampton the best of luck in their academic endeavors. On behalf of Scholastic Scrimmage and PBS 39, thank you for your continued support and viewership. Though they may be at times teams of rivals, one truth remains: you can't beat brains.
Scholastic Scrimmage is brought to you by the members of PBS 39 and by
Scholastic Scrimmage is sponsored by St. Luke's University Health Network, the region's leading provider of medical education. For more than 100 years, St. Luke's has been dedicated to educating physicians, nurses, and healthcare professionals. To learn more, call St. Luke's InfoLink, toll free at 866 St. Luke's, or visit sluhn.org.
Support for PBS 39's educational programming is provided by the Deluxe Corporation Foundation, proud to support quality programming on PBS 39.
This program is recorded at the PPL Public Media Center at PBS 39 in Bethlehem.